Thank you for joining me for another Quick Hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn. With me today, I have Sara Oblak Speicher. She's a former international athlete, life coach, and remote operations specialist and transformational expert. I have Dr. Mohan Ananda. He is a scientist, a lawyer, a serial entrepreneur, and author, and he is helping people succeed in business. I have Fitzgerald. She says, whether you like it or not, you are in sales. She works as a coach, helping business leaders rise above their daily operations to identify their C-suite so they can continue to grow. The question that I have for the three of you today, what is the difference between flattering and complimenting someone? Sara, kick us off.
I think it's in sincerity and intention. For example, not too long ago, I got a haircut, which is, let's just leave it at, I haven't worn my hair down since because it's just not a good sight. However, my husband trying to, make me feel better. He was like, no, it looks nice. It looks okay. As much as he tried, I was like, yeah, intentions are good, but it's insincere. So I think that is something that we are on a giving and receiving end on a daily basis as we're going through life, whether we're trying to flatter somebody to get it our way, or when we work with somebody who we think is super successful, as we can also see looking around, like there's a lot of nodding and yes, people trying to keep them happy, or then complimenting somebody who's like, it comes from the heart. It's really sincere. It's genuine.
I agree with what she said. I think flattery is not genuine. It's more a fake. It's more to benefit themselves rather than the person. So there is a very bad motive. It's not a leadership quality. That means they cannot really succeed. In fact, those who flatter, if they are in my group, I'll walk away, and that's the end of their relationship with me, because it's a bad sign. It's really a sign of insincerity. It's a sign of fraud, sign of dishonesty. It's bad. Period. Complimenting is really to give encouragement, to bring the best out of them. So complimenting people is the right thing. And I would encourage people to compliment each other. But flattery is a non-starter. That's just my take.
Catherine, what was your thoughts on this question?
Well, being a former English major, I immediately went to the dictionary and read the definition of flattery because I had my ideas about it, but I wanted to know if my ideas were congruent with what actually Webster's dictionary says. And actually, the connotation that both Sara and Mohan have explained is really what my instinct was. And yet the definition really doesn't convey that little subtle difference. And what I would say is it's all about the intention of the person giving the compliment, and I think of flattery in the same way, that it's kind of fake and it's not real. But I think the intention is the key to the difference between the two words. When you are flattering someone, you are doing it with an expectation of a return on some level. So the intention is to win someone over from you. Whereas a compliment, in my opinion, is when it's done well, it's a source of expression that is admiration for a quality or a talent or skill that another person has. And that admiration is genuine. And I would think overall, the difference between the two is compliments are authentic and deeply connected to the person you are delivering the message to. Whereas flattering is more connected to me or the person who's giving the flattery than it is the person who's receiving it. And by that very nature becomes inauthentic.
I agree with that. I had an interesting situation many years ago, and it must have been emotionally scarring because I remember it, where I actually complimented someone and really meant what I said, but they took it as flattery, and their response to me was extremely harsh. And to the point of, we both know that's not true, and that's ridiculous, and I will not speak to you if you're going to be rude. And I was like, oh, I was so taken aback that I didn't know how to respond. So if someone misconstrues a compliment as flattery and responds in a really harsh way, what do you do with that?
I personally would wonder a bigger picture of them being able to receive, especially in the world and working with women, oftentimes we have hard time receiving a compliment, and we would come up with all sorts of excuses, or we'll brush it off, or have an emotional reaction thinking it's something entirely different. So I would be really curious about this bigger picture here.
Mm-hmm.
I think because this particular case, that person must be kind of feeling themselves not worthy of your compliment. So that is something to do with that individual rather than you complimenting. So they feel you're exaggerating, you're flattering, you're a fake. That's because they feel themselves less, in my opinion. So somehow or other, this particular incident, that person did not know you that well. That's my take.
That's true. She didn't know me.
I can really relate to it being kind of an affront when you're genuinely trying to pay a compliment. I would agree with both Sara and Mohan that it is more about them than it is about you. As Sara mentioned, that there's a much bigger issue here than your, compliment light. in her perspective. And I would almost, depending on the relationship, I would almost challenge that person to, why would you say that? And kind of get curious and really dig in and kind of put them in a position where they have to explain their abrupt response, not to be confrontational, but maybe to help them move a little bit further on their own journey of self-discovery.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, I can add, if somebody is complimenting you and you don't feel like you deserve it, I mean, say that's the case, then the way the person should think, is this person going to get something out of me because he's complimenting? And if you can analyze it and say, if you can kind of detect whether it is genuine or it's insincere. So from that, you can relate whether it is really a compliment or is it a fake flattery.
Yeah. I would like Mohan to go back to something you said at the beginning, which for you, flattery is a non-starter. So when someone flatters you, how do you respond?
That is, when somebody flatters me knowingly, it's a flattery. That means I have to convince myself. So there could be a compliment aspect to it, but I know that is not true. Then I think, sometimes I may be wrong, but I am concluding that person is fake. So my further relationship with that person is not going to be beneficial to both of us. So I'll cut the kind of a connection. I generally don't like when somebody flatters to take advantage of the situation or for any personal benefit. That means it's a character flaw. I work with a lot of people, and I have two types of people. One, I have a long relationship with the person, or very short relations. That's it. Type of people will be that short relations.
I think for me, my reaction is the same. Whether I feel like I'm being flattered or being complimented, I'm likely to just say, oh, thank you, or whatever. And it's my behind the scenes response to your point, Mohan, that's different.
No, I always thank people. Of course, if somebody flatters, you're going to be thanking, but you get a feeling there is some ulterior motive here.
There's an agenda.
Yeah, because I'm relating to dishonesty. That's so
interesting.
Because I don't want to work with the dishonest people. Character, integrity, honesty are the key elements working in a business relationship. And if you miss those, then it's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think the depth of the relationship with the person and the compliment, being correlated or the flattery being correlated is really the key there. Because if they don't know you and their first thing out of their mouth is, oh, I think you're amazing, blah, blah, blah. That will indicate that there's something you're not seeing. There's something underneath behind this other than true, genuine caring, because they don't know me well enough to know that. But if there is a relationship and there is then a compliment after you have known a little bit about each other, even if it's a short amount of time, but it's an in-depth conversation. So it's not necessarily correlated to how long you've known them. It's the depth of the conversation or the relationship that really indicates whether it's a compliment or a flattery, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you walk
that is
into a
our 10
mattress
minutes.
store.
So I'm going to
Oh.
have to cut us off there. I know it's such an interesting topic, this flattery and compliment thing. I'm so thankful for the three of you for having this conversation with me. I think that we barely touched it, and I look forward to speaking to each of you again really soon.